Hi, this is Christian. This is the first, or an overview of the first Maxpatch, which is the one controlled by Can. I did record this video before, if you saw it before, but every time I rewatched it, I got very, very annoyed at the constant sound going on in the background. Just doing that the whole way through when it was something like 7 minutes. So I thought I'd re-record it just to sort of go over everything again, but without that annoying sound. So, uh, basically, it's kind of just a stacked patch. Everything kind of just goes down and works in a sort of downward motion. So starting from the top, there's this Arduino subpatch, and this takes in data from the Arduino here and unpacks it down here. It's just serial data. For this prototype, there's only two potentiometers. The reason there's 6 inputs is because I used this subpatch in a previous music computing project, and I just didn't delete these inputs because I couldn't be bothered. So it's just two potentiometers. This first one is the up and down motion, and this one's the sort of swinging motion. So input 1 and input 2, which are there, are sent to different parts of the patch. So input 1 is sent over here, and the way it works is you manually enter into this scale object, the sort of calibration, which is when the can is at the bottom, it's this first value, and the can's at the top, it's this second value. Enter it in, and it scales it between 0 and 8. That's because there's 8 chords, as you can hear. Yeah, something like that. So as you move the can up and down, it moves this slider up and down. This outputs a number and a bang and everything it needs to this call object, which contains, it's opened in my other screen, I've got to move over, which contains all the chord information in frequencies. So when it outputs a 1, it outputs this chord. When it outputs a 2, it outputs that chord. 3, that one. 4, that one. So it outputs all these numbers in sort of one message, and then they're unpacked into their 5 separate values here and put into these message boxes. So as you change it, those message boxes change, and that information is then sent into these little blue objects, which are glides or portamentos, or whatever you want to call them, which are the rate of which is controlled over here. So if I put it up to the top, get a really slow one. If I put it down to the bottom, you get hardly any portamento at all, except for on the top note, which I'll go into explaining in 1 second. So yeah, the glide object basically works in that it takes in one number and then the next number, and it smooths between them using this ramp smooth object, which basically does it all for you. And ramp smooth smooths a signal, so you have to convert that number into a signal and send it in, and then send that into the cycle object, which takes it and outputs it, the frequency information. So as I was saying a minute ago, the top note here, which is this glide object, which is opened, the portamento has always got 10,000 samples added to it, because I thought it was quite nice when the rest of the notes are, changing instantaneously, and this little top note is kind of sort of spacily moving around no matter where the portamento is. Yeah, so those portamento values set as a cycle object, which outputs them as a sine wave, and they are also modified. The sine's phase is modified by this modifier object. And this modifier object is controlled by the sort of back and forth motion of the can, the swinging motion, which is received here as input 2, scaled in the same way as in when the can is in its resting position, you put its value in first, and then when it's fully sort of pulled out, or fully sort of pulled towards you, you put in its value, and then scale it between, I did it between 0 and 110, because I thought that gave a nice amount of modulation without it being too much. So the call object sends the chords here, and they're unpacked the frequencies are multiplied by 2, so there's some harmonic relationship in the modifier, but it gives a sort of brighter tone than if it was just the original frequencies. So if I play what it sounds like here, open the modifier, you can hear there how it kind of gives that FME kind of sound. I also stuck a glide on these values as well, because I wanted them to constantly be in the same relationship, so there's no sort of discordantness, or no sort of instantaneous changes when you don't want them between the different chords. The scale object, like I said, controls this gain. So when it's at 0, there's none of this is coming through, and it's just a pure sine tone. And the higher it is, the more it's modulating that phase. And because it's modulating quite rapidly, it gives that FME tone. So back up here is the harmonic control section, which I used a version of in an organ I made in a Maxpatch, and it was for sort of kind of like drawbar effects on an organ that were constantly changing. And the way it works is it has this harmonic rate, which is how quickly things move. I have to turn it on, otherwise it doesn't do anything. It has this sort of harmonic rate, which is sort of how quickly things move. So you can see here, this is moving up and down. You can hear the gain going up and down of all the notes. But it also has this harmonic phase, which changes the phase. And this is actually a multi-slide, as you'll see in a second. So you see there, change the phase a bit. You get this sort of wave effect. And it changes the gain of each different cycle object according to where it is on this thing here. So the way it works is inside the harmonic control subpatch. There's some more subpatches to keep it tidy. There's a cycle object, and the first frequency knob controls the cycle frequency. It's like an LFO basically. And the second one controls the phase, so sort of where it sits on a diagram, I guess. And it's converted to a number and sent out scales to a gain value, and then turned into a gain. And the phase information is sent and multiplied by sort of incremental values between 1 and 2 here. So when it's between 0 and 1, you get sort of an equal sort of change in the phasing, and the waves kind of get bigger. But then as you go over 1 or 2, I can't remember where it is. I think if you go over 1, yeah, that phase kind of gets spread further out, so you get these kind of more interesting phasing effects. I'm not very good at explaining it, so I'll show it to you. So you kind of go over here, get bigger and bigger. Then you end up getting these kind of ones where this wave is kind of in between these three, and it seems to kind of wrap around and come back to these two. And you get these really sort of quite nice off-kilter kind of waves. So yeah, this multi-slider is just basically an easy visualizer of seeing what's going on. There's another one here. I don't know why I put 2 in, but it looks quite nice. So this is an easy way of visualizing what the harmonics are doing, and then that information is sent into this gain object, which is basically a mixer for all the different cycle objects. And it unpacks it all together, unpacks all that stuff, and then controls each of these gain sliders separately. And then that is sent out to the output, but also to a reverb here, which is a C-verb, which I believe is an Ableton reverb of some description. It's not on at the minute. I'll just turn it on. You can kind of hear. Turn up the decay a bit. Turn it up. It's quite a nice sort of, gives a little sort of spacey sound to it, and it kind of makes the chords flow into each other a bit more nicely. It makes it a bit smoother. Makes it sound less dry as well. It sounds a bit nicer. So yeah, that's the first Maxpatch, the one controlled by one can. Yeah, hope you enjoyed the video.